It started with a parking space, just one. A sunny Thursday morning in downtown Fairgrove. The courthouse steps shimmered under the spring sun, and a row of meters blinked red as the lunch crowd scattered. But on the corner of Maple and 3rd, next to a blue SUV with a baby on board sticker, tension was rising. "Ma'am, you can't park here," the officer barked. She turned slowly. Her hand rested on her round belly, calm, composed. Dressed in a flowing navy maternity dress, flats, and a soft white cardigan. No makeup, no jewelry, just a simple woman, carrying life, about to walk into the city building across the street. "I'm allowed 15 minutes, she said. "I checked the sign." The officer stepped closer, young, white, leaning a bit too heavy on his belt, like he was waiting for a reason. "You people always have an excuse," he muttered. She blinked. "What did you just say?" "You heard me," he said. "Now move the damn car before I tow it." A few heads turned. A lawyer in a charcoal suit paused mid-step. A barista across the street leaned against the window, watching. But no one stepped in. Her name was Danielle Carter, 34, 6 months pregnant, and married to the mayor of Fairgrove, though no one here seemed to recognize her. And that would be their first mistake. She exhaled, calmly pulled out her phone. "I'm calling my husband," she said. The officer swatted the phone out of her hand. It hit the pavement, cracked. People gasped. "Put your hands where I can see them," he shouted, suddenly louder. A second officer emerged from behind the cruiser, taller, older, same uniform, same glare. "She's resisting," the first one yelled. Danielle didn't move. "I'm pregnant." "Don't care." The taller one grabbed her arm. She winced, her other hand cradling her belly. "Please, stop. You're hurting me." But that word, "please," didn't land like it should have. Instead, the younger officer twisted her wrist behind her back. She screamed, not loud, but real. "Get on the ground," he shouted. A crowd had formed now, phones out. A woman yelled, "She's pregnant! What the hell are you doing?" They didn't stop. Danielle was forced to her knees, on the pavement, in public, in broad daylight, face flushed, one hand shielding her stomach as they wrestled the other behind her back. "Stop filming!" the older cop barked, but no one stopped. They cuffed her. Right there, pressed her against the hood of her own car. Her breath came in shallow gasps, eyes wide, trying to stay conscious. "She's bleeding!" someone screamed. A woman in scrubs pushed forward. "I'm a nurse. She's having contractions." "Back up or I'll arrest you too," the officer snapped. Danielle groaned, sweat beading on her forehead. Then sirens, not police. An ambulance. The nurse had already called it in. The paramedics rushed out, forcing the officers to back off. One knelt beside Danielle, checked her pulse, checked her belly. "She needs to go now." They unshackled her. Too late. Too public. Too many phones. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't yell. They just watched, silent, furious, because they knew something was wrong. And later, when this nurse whispered something to one of the EMTs, when the driver's eyes widened and looked back at Danielle, it was already too late for cover-ups. "Get me her ID," the paramedic whispered to the officer. They looked and froze, because next to the cracked phone on the asphalt was a lanyard. City of Fairgrove. Gold lettering. Mayor's spouse, D. Carter. The older officer paled. The younger one cursed under his breath. But it was done. The cuffs, the bruises, the blood, the crowd, the phones. Danielle was loaded into the back of the ambulance, her eyes never leaving the two officers. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't need to. Because in that moment, they finally realized they hadn't just assaulted a black woman. They hadn't just manhandled someone's wife. They just declared war on the mayor's family. And Fairgrove was about to erupt. By noon, the footage had gone viral. 3 angles, 2 bystanders, 1 security cam from the cafe across the street. All of them showed the same thing. A pregnant black woman screaming shoved face first onto a hot metal hood by 2 white officers. Fairgrove PD trended on Twitter. So did #Justice for Danielle. But inside the Fairgrove Police Department, silence. Officer Mills, the younger one, stood in front of the internal review board that afternoon. Calm, no apology, no hesitation. "She refused a lawful order," he said. Captain Rourke, a man with a crew cut and a badge he wore like a shield, leaned back in his chair. "She posed no threat," someone said. a junior review officer, nervous, probably fresh out of college. She raised her voice, Mills snapped. Could have had a weapon. You saw how fast she reached for her phone. Could have been anything. You knew she was pregnant, another board member said. Mills shrugged. She said she was. Lots of folks lied to get sympathy. The room shifted. Quiet. Discomfort crawling up the walls like smoke. Outside the room, the tension was worse. Fairgrove wasn't a big city. News traveled faster than traffic. Half the town was horrified. The other half, convinced it was all an overreaction. She should have just complied. She escalated it. She made it about race. The mayor, Jeremiah Carter, didn't speak publicly, not yet, but he didn't have to. Everyone in City Hall knew the storm was building. He hadn't been seen since the incident. No press conference, no tweets, no interviews. Only a message sent through his office's spokesperson. The mayor is spending time with his wife and unborn child. He will address the situation in due course. But privately, he was livid. Inside their quiet home in the Westridge neighborhood, Danielle lay on the couch, one arm bandaged, her feet elevated, monitor strapped around her belly. You could have lost the baby, the nurse said. You were contracting from the stress, the bruising. Danielle didn't answer. She stared out the window, silent, watching the tulips sway in the spring breeze. Her hands trembled when Jeremiah touched her shoulder. I'm going to fix this, he said softly. Danielle turned to him. I don't want justice because I'm your wife, she said. I want it because I'm a citizen, a black woman, a human being. Jeremiah nodded. But it wasn't that simple, because downtown at the Fairgrove Police Union office, a different story was being written. Mayor's just looking for a reason to defund us, someone muttered. Whole thing's political. They're coming for us. The union rep, a bulky man named Chet Dillon, gathered the press that evening, and he didn't hold back. Officer Mills acted within protocol, he said. If we start letting people scream in our faces and disobey lawful orders, this town will fall apart. We're not racists, we're enforcers. Was it appropriate to throw a pregnant woman on a car hood? One reporter asked. She resisted, Dillon shot back. You think criminals come with warning labels? Pregnancy doesn't grant immunity. Cameras clicked. Microphones pushed closer. We stand by our officers, he said again louder. Mayor Carter needs to remember whose city this really is. Boom. It hit the evening news like a bomb. The officers were being protected. The mayor was being challenged. And Danielle? She became a lightning rod. Blogs dissected her past. Commentators dug into her social media. She went to law school but never practiced. She was active in protest groups. She once called out police brutality on Facebook. To some, she was a hero. To others, a threat. But the truth? The truth was in the silence between her breaths. Every time she felt a flutter in her stomach and wondered if her baby had felt that trauma too. The city was splitting down the middle. And the officers? They were more confident than ever. At a bar 2 nights later, Officer Mills and Officer Graham toasted beers. Still working, Mills said with a smirk. Damn right, Graham chuckled. No suspensions, no charges, just paperwork. And more support than ever from certain people in town. You think the mayor's going to come after us? Someone at the bar asked. Mills laughed. He doesn't have the balls? They didn't know. They had no idea that across town, inside a quiet room where city plans were written and sealed, the mayor wasn't preparing a press release. He was preparing something much bigger. Because Jeremiah Carter wasn't just a mayor. He was a strategist. And the last time someone came after his family, they lost their seat, their pension, and their freedom. Fairgrove didn't know it yet, but the balance was about to shift. The medals were polished. The press was invited. The stage was already set. Exactly 1 week after the assault, the Fairgrove Police Department held a ceremony in front of City Hall. Officers in crisp uniforms, flags fluttering behind them, applause choreographed like theater. And front and center, standing tall like nothing ever happened, Officer Kyle Mills, the man who shoved a pregnant black woman onto a car hood, the man who now received the Medal of Civic Valor. For his bravery and composure during a high-stress altercation, the announcer read aloud. Danielle watched it from her living room. She didn't blink, didn't speak, just stared at the screen as the man who bruised her spine and nearly cost her the baby smiled for the cameras. Jeremiah was pacing, phone in one hand, jaw tight, suit half-buttoned. "This is a provocation," he muttered. "It's not even subtle anymore." Danielle turned to him. "Don't hold a press conference," she said. "Don't tweet. Don't play defense." "Then what?" he snapped. "Do nothing?" "No," she said. "Do everything, but quietly." Meanwhile, downtown rumbled. The press didn't know what to do with the narrative anymore. Headlines split across the spectrum. Hero officer defends public safety amid escalating tensions. Pregnant black woman still recovering as assailant honored. Mayor silent on assault. Critics say he's protecting his own. The city boiled. Protests bloomed outside the courthouse. Peaceful ones, mostly mothers in strollers. Students with signs. A group of pastors formed a circle to pray near the fountain. But near the police station, a different energy. Armed counter-protesters held flags, shouted insults. Some wore shirts that read, "Obey or else." On day 9, things broke. A protester threw a cup of ice at a cruiser. The police responded with pepper spray, and Fairgrove became a headline on national news. That night, the mayor was called to the governor's office. Not invited, summoned. Behind closed doors, Governor Halverson leaned forward. Silver hair, cold eyes, voice like gravel. "You're losing the center," he said, "fast." "They assaulted my wife," Jeremiah said flatly. "They protected a street corner," the governor replied. "And now the state is watching. The country is watching. We don't need a martyr, Jeremiah. We need calm." Jeremiah didn't answer, because calm was not what they gave Danielle. Calm was not what Officer Mills gave her when he bent her wrist until it cracked. "But publicly," Jeremiah nodded. "Understood, sir." The press said the mayor was folding. The opposition said he was weak. The union called it a victory. And the police department? They leaned in harder. 3 more officers from the same precinct filed misconduct immunity requests. Internal affairs began delaying responses. Emails went unanswered. Evidence was still being reviewed. By week 3, Officer Mills had a new nickname among his crew, the Enforcer. He liked it. He started walking taller, started patrolling again. Same streets, same attitude. And one afternoon outside a gas station near 7th and Martin, he passed a group of teenagers on bikes. One of them called it out, "You gonna slam me on a hood too, Enforcer?" Mills stopped walking, turned, walked up to the boy, maybe 16, skinny, black, nervous but standing his ground. "What's your name?" Mills asked. "Don't need to tell you. You do now." "You gonna assault another kid?" the teen said. "This time I'll make sure my mom sues you." That's when Mills pulled the pen, clicked it. Not a weapon, a citation pad. But the message was clear. "I'll see you in court," he said. "You'll see me on YouTube," the teen snapped back. Mills turned. He didn't write the ticket, but he left with a smile, because he thought he was untouchable. And why wouldn't he? No charges, no investigation, no suspension. Only medals, praise, protection. Even his captain shook his hand every morning like he saved the damn city. But what Mills didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Danielle had a meeting that morning, not with a lawyer, not with a journalist, but with a federal investigator from the Department of Justice. She didn't come in through the front. She didn't announce her arrival. She wore sunglasses, a coat, walked into a private elevator that took her straight to the 6th floor of a downtown building no one noticed. Inside, a room with files, with evidence, with sworn affidavits and surveillance logs, and with 3 attorneys who had spent the last 10 days building something quietly, carefully, with the full weight of the Federal Civil Rights Division behind them. "Are you ready to go on record?" the lead investigator asked. Danielle didn't hesitate. Yes, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about exposure and justice, the kind that doesn't come with hashtags and marches, though those matter too, but the kind that leaves records and resignations and handcuffs. Outside, Officer Mills walked past a street mural someone had painted overnight. A woman, kneeling, pregnant, eyes closed. Above her, 3 words in bold white paint. "We remember Danielle." He rolled his eyes. He still thought it was over. He still thought he'd won. But justice? Justice was coming. And this time, it wasn't wearing blue. Monday morning, a sealed envelope arrived at Fairgrove City Hall, hand-delivered. No stamps, no return address. Inside, a federal summons. The United States Department of Justice versus Fairgrove Police Department. Grounds, violation of civil rights under Title 18, Section 242. At 9:15 a.m., Mayor Jeremiah Carter walked into City Hall through the side entrance. Calm, silent, flanked by two federal agents. No press, no warnings. But by 10 o'clock a.m., the news broke. Live coverage. Helicopters above the precinct. Reporters at the courthouse steps. The words federal investigation flashing across every screen in the state. Inside the DOJ's office, Danielle sat across from a conference table lined with legal teams and civil rights officials. No coat today, no sunglasses, just a navy blue blazer and a voice like stone. "I am Danielle Carter," she began. "I was assaulted by Officer Kyle Mills. I was 6 months pregnant. I asked for help. I was denied. I stated I was in pain. I was ignored, and I have the footage to prove it." She pushed a flash drive across the table. One of the attorneys plugged it in. The screen lit up. Security camera. Time-stamped. High resolution. Audio included. Not the video that went viral. A new angle. Clearer. Closer. Captured from the cafe's private security feed, a feed Officer Mills didn't know existed. The footage showed his face, his words, his hand slamming Danielle's wrist, his exact smirk as she winced in pain. The room went still. "You're sure this is untouched?" one attorney asked. "Direct from the original source," she replied, "and notarized." It didn't stop there. Danielle opened a folder. Inside, signed statements. From the nurse, the EMT, 2 employees inside the city permit office who witnessed the assault, and a third, a surprise witness, Officer Lena Chavez. She had been in the second cruiser that arrived too late. She saw the aftermath, the blood on the pavement. Danielle's eyes, glassy and hollow. "I asked to report it internally," her affidavit read. "Captain Rourke said you didn't see anything." And now, they were seeing everything. At 11 o'clock a.m., DOJ officials entered the Fairgrove Police Department with warrants in hand. Computers seized. Internal reports confiscated. Body cam footage backed up. Officer Mills was not at his desk. He was at a steakhouse, eating lunch with a local councilman and laughing over a story about traffic stops. Until his phone rang. Captain Rourke. One word. Run. But it was too late. As he stepped into the parking lot, 2 unmarked sedans pulled in front of his car. Doors opened. Agents stepped out. "Officer Kyle Mills," one said, "you're under arrest for civil rights violations and obstruction of justice." Click. The cuffs went on. His eyes darted. He looked for cameras, for friends, for someone to protest. No one did. Not even his captain, who an hour later was handed his own federal indictment. Back at City Hall, Mayor Carter stood behind a podium. Cameras live, nation watching. His wife sat in the front row, calm, steady. "I have served Fairgrove for 7 years," he began, "and I've always believed in its people. But belief is not a substitute for accountability. That's why I authorize full cooperation with the Department of Justice." He paused, looked at Danielle, then back at the cameras. "The officers who harmed my wife will be prosecuted. But this is not just about her. It's about every citizen who's been ignored, silenced, or brutalized by the system we swore to uphold. This ends now." Flashbulbs exploded. The room erupted in questions. He didn't answer any, just stepped down and walked to his wife. They didn't hug. They didn't smile. They didn't need to, because the moment spoke for itself. By that evening, Officer Mills' mugshot was everywhere. He didn't look like a hero. He didn't look like an enforcer. He looked scared, confused, exposed. And the crowd outside the courthouse? Thousands. Some held signs that said, "Justice for Danielle." Others just stood in silence, because silence was how it started. But this was how it ends. 3 months later, the badge came off. Not with a salute, not with honor, but with a court order in a trembling hand. Kyle Mills stood in front of the bench, wearing a wrinkled suit that didn't fit. No uniform, no applause, no medals, just handcuffs. The courtroom was packed. News cameras lined the back wall. Reporters whispered into microphones. Spectators leaned forward like they were watching a live verdict from a movie. Except this one was real. The judge didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Mr. Mills," she said, flipping through the pages in front of her, "the evidence is overwhelming. You did not enforce the law. You violated it. You did not protect. You assaulted, and you did not make a mistake. You made a choice." He said nothing. Behind him, Captain Rourke sat with his head bowed, waiting for his own sentencing. To the left, Officer Lena Chavez sat upright, proud. Her testimony helped build the entire federal case. And in the front row, poised, silent, with one hand on her now-born daughter's blanket, sat Danielle Carter. Not blinking, not smiling, just watching. The judge continued, "Effective immediately, you are stripped of all law enforcement certification. You are sentenced to 5 years in federal prison without parole for obstruction of justice, civil rights violations, and perjury." Bang! Gavel down. Justice delivered. But the story didn't end there, because Fairgrove changed. Not overnight, but steadily. A full audit of the police department followed the trial. Over 40 misconduct cases were reopened. 6 officers resigned. 2 were charged. 1 captain retired unexpectedly before his own internal review could be completed. Danielle didn't return to the shadows. She stepped forward, not as the mayor's wife, not as a victim, but as a voice. She was appointed to lead the Community Oversight Council, the first independent body in Fairgrove history to monitor police behavior, accountability, and reform. Under her leadership, new rules were passed. Body cam footage must be released within 48 hours after use of force incidents. Officers who receive 3 civilian complaints are suspended pending review. All pregnant individuals are now flagged in police databases for extra protocol, the Danielle Law. People didn't forget her name. They painted it on murals. They printed it on flyers during local elections. They whispered it in meetings where real change was finally taking root. And on a warm Saturday afternoon, as spring returned to the courthouse steps, Danielle stood holding her baby girl on one hip and a microphone in the other. The mayor stood beside her, not speaking, not leading, just standing in support. The crowd was silent, waiting. Danielle looked out at them, calm, strong. Then she said one sentence. "This is not about one woman, it's about a system that thinks silence keeps it safe." A murmur rolled through the crowd, then applause, then chants. Not angry ones, not desperate, just determined, because Fairgrove was no longer quiet. And Danielle? Danielle was no longer a name on a hospital wristband or a blurry figure in a viral video. She was the woman who refused to go away quietly, the woman who turned pain into policy. And as her daughter curled into her shoulder, unaware of the history wrapped around her tiny fists, the city behind them began to move forward, one law, one voice, one truth at a time. What would you do if someone in your family was treated like Danielle? Would you stay silent or stand up? Tell us what justice means to you in the comments.